Hello, everyone. You'll have seen in the news recently that there are reports of some businesses requiring employees to come back to work permanently. For example, Apple, I think, with effect from September, whereas other businesses are taking the approach that employees can work from anywhere, giving them as much flexibility as possible. We've previously presented on home working policies. And this video is more of a hybrid, and with that in mind, specifically implementing a hybrid working policy, which means an employee spending part of the time at home or at a location of their choice and part coming into the business. So, we're just going to take you through the key sections which you might want to consider when developing a policy or implementing your rules. And I think the first point to make is that flexibility is key. So you want to be able to withdraw such arrangements at your discretion if possible, although the longer that pattern goes on, the more of an implied contractual right an employee might try to argue. So the first is who the policy applies to. Do you apply it to all employees? Do you require a probationary period to be served? Might it only apply in certain roles, certain work types? Might be helpful to define that under the policy. We would then define what hybrid arrangements are, informal, flexible working arrangements rather than committing to a defined contractual policy of these days you're in, these days you're out. We might set a minimum proportion of working time, which has to be in the office, and we may then allow the remainder of that time to be spent at a location of the employee's discretion. We should state that those dates and times have to be agreed with a line manager or supervisor, head of department, whatever we have. We might put a trial period arrangement in place, I think subject to the work from home guidance being lifted. Many businesses have been in a state of temporary transition, and committing to a policy like this really is a big step. So we might want an entire trial period for the whole business to review whether or not this policy is going to stick around or not. We'd obviously retain the right to dictate that an employee comes in for reasonable meetings and training as well outside of the general arrangement which might be agreed. And we want the flexibility to modify in any way. So not simply to withdraw the policy, but to modify the arrangements at our discretion at any point. As we say, not all roles are suitable for hybrid working, so we might put some restrictions in place, such as if you have to be present to do the job, if you need personal interaction with your colleagues. If your appraisal confirms that your performance is unsatisfactory, then there might be an increased level of monitoring for a certain period of time which is needed. You may have a disciplinary warning on file. We might want to restrict employees from working from home or flexible location if they have a warning. And they may need some quite detailed training and supervision which requires personal interaction. So we may need them to work from home. The next section we have in the policy are really a series of declarations from the employee, items that they are agreeing to by working under a hybrid arrangement. So they have a suitable work environment from their location of choice. They'll continue to comply with the contract. They'll be able to work independently and motivate themselves, manage their own workload effectively, manage pressures created by a remote working location, adapt to new working practices, be flexible, so reciprocally, and exercise flexibility with us if we make changes to those arrangements. Make any arrangements for the care of children and dependents. So I think when we're talking about that suitable working environment, we have to be confident, particularly if people are going to be having remote meetings, that there aren't going to be those distractions in the home, and there certainly aren't going to be any childcaring responsibilities. Talking of location, so the remote working location might not necessarily be somebody's home. Depending on the job, it could be a cafe, a quiet space, another location of somebody's choice. But we need to specify that should really be within a reasonable commuting distance of the office. We would include some provisions on working abroad, whether you're going to potentially allow that or not. I think that is a pretty brave and revolutionary step. Maybe get the domestic home working arrangements in place first. The section on management training and attendance. So again, just reiterating that people have to come in to do training if we need them to do so. Employees will be subject to the same performance measures and objectives just as everybody else, trying to bridge that gap between treating employees differently who are working remotely and some working in the office. We want to ensure and reassure employees that they're not going to be disadvantaged in their promotion prospects by committing to giving them the same opportunities as any employee in the office. And we might want to comment on hot desking arrangements as well. So when you do come in, will you have your own desk? Will you be required to hot desk? Will you be required to move about the building? We have a section on health and safety, just as with a pure home working policy. So employees ensuring that their environment is safe, that there are no hazards. We really should be looking at undertaking either a remote or in-person risk assessment at some point. We have a section on equipment, so who will be providing that? Will we be providing duplicate equipment if an employee is spending some time in the office, or are they required to take that equipment home? We should require the employee to keep that secure, and that moves us on to insurance. So we need to decide who is going to be responsible for insuring the equipment. And on a similar note, data security and confidentiality, can't get away from it. We can put a number of rules in place in relation to the security of our data. So that's standard things you would find in an IT policy, VPN, changing passwords regularly, not sharing them, not holding material on personal computers, ensuring that the Wi-Fi is nice and secure as far as possible. And then with any physical materials, ensuring that they're not on show, that hopefully they're kept in lockable cabinets or drawers, and a blanket statement from the employee that they are agreeing to comply with our data protection policies. And finally, as we've said, we want the flexibility to be able to reverse this arrangement if we need to, so we would have some termination provisions in our favour if we wanted to implement. Now, I do think as the lockdown work from home messages are lifted, more and more businesses will be considering this type of arrangement rather than a full-blown home working policy for all of the employees' working hours. If you do want some advice on putting your own policy in place, then please do get in touch. employmenthub@chadwicklawrence.co.uk, or visit the website for our full details, chadwicklawrence.co.uk. Thank you.